Hello and welcome to the News9 Plus show on the world's first news and current affairs OTT platform, News9 Plus. Prime Minister Narendra Modi travels to Moscow a few days from now for a historic summit with President Vladimir Putin. It's the first time he's going to be traveling to Moscow in nearly a decade. He's of course met President Putin before that, but he hasn't been to Moscow in a while. But the big question as India meets Russia in the middle of its war in Ukraine is the China factor, the dragon in the room. Can Xi Jinping be taken for granted when Prime Minister Modi and President Putin meet in Moscow? Joining us to discuss this today are Ambassador Manju Seth, Commander VG Jayaprakasan, who joins us from all the way from Vladivostok, and my colleague Justin Thomas in the studio. Welcome to the News9 Plus show. Commander Jayaprakasan, I want to start by asking you this. You've been literally a pillar of the India-Russia defense cooperation. 3 decades in what you're doing, keeping India's military hardware of Russian origin going, servicing joint production, now working in Russian shipyards with Indian personnel. Tell us how important this visit of Prime Minister Modi is to Russia. It's a historic summit. It's happening after nearly a decade in Moscow. The Prime Minister hasn't been there since 2019. Tell us the view from Russia right now.
Well, I think this was a long overdue visit. As all of us know, the bonhomie between our Prime Minister and President Putin is beyond anybody's imagination or description. So, I'm not really sure what must have been happening even if he had not come to Russia for a long time. So, to my mind, it will rekindle a lot of work which was work in progress. So I hope things will be moving at a very fast pace from now onwards.
Right. Things will be moving at a very fast pace, Commander Jayaprakasan. I'll come to you on those particular things and that aspect of the relationship. But I want to bring in Ambassador Seth on this. Ambassador Seth, the Russia-India relationship is a relationship of no limits. It's a no limits partnership, as we've grown to use saying that for so many years, since 1971, possibly even before that. And indeed, of course, when President Putin took over about 2 decades ago in Russia. But of late, there's been this dragon in the room. And today, you have President Putin and President Xi Jinping meeting in Astana. Prime Minister Modi is not there. He's obviously going only to Moscow later in the month. But how much of a factor is China going to be in this traditional Russia-India bonhomie, given what's going on in the world today with the Cold War 2.0, as people are calling it, and rival power blocs?
Yes, absolutely. You're right. The new so-called Cold War seems to have started. And our relations with Moscow, with Russia, have always been, as you very rightly said, very special, very strong, and have been strengthening over the years. There has been a slight, concern in India, and after the coming of both China and Russia coming closer to each other, and I think there is equally some concern in Russia with India becoming more closer to the US and other Western countries. So I think on both sides there is some concern about the other in some ways. But having said that, I would like to emphasize that yes, Russia and India enjoy a certain deep relation over so many years. Yes, defense has been a major contributor to this, but I think otherwise also we have seen over the years how Russia and India have worked together on many issues. And especially now we have this annual summit at the, which has been ongoing.
Yes.
in both countries alternately, or they decide when. But now it hasn't been held due to COVID and other reasons, and in the Ukraine war. But I think the Prime Minister going there for this as part of the annual summits with them, with Russia, with the Russian President Putin, I think it's a strong indicator, and it's the first bilateral visit. On the one hand, yes, he has gone for the G7, but that was not a bilateral visit. But he
Yes.
has also reaffirmed his India's commitment to our relationship and partners in the West, in the US, and with the US. At the same time, going to Russia now sends a clear message that this is an old, time-tested relationship, and we value it. India
Yes,
values this.
it's an old time-tested relationship, Justin. There's no doubt about that. India and Russia have been friends for a long time. But, you know, given the way the geopolitics is shaping up in the world today, given how circumstances have forced Russia and China to kind of, cooperate and collaborate on a number of issues in opposition to the United States, how is this going to be viewed in the West? A Modi-Putin summit at a time when you have Russia in the third year of the Ukraine war, and a NATO summit that's on in Europe at roughly the same time that Prime Minister Modi is going to be there.
India appears to be a fulcrum for both the West and for Russia. Russia, because it had to, get closer to China, because EU and the West were their biggest trading partners.
Yes.
But after the war, everything changed for them, and China is the bigger partner in this alliance.
Yes.
And for India to be part of that alliance is so difficult that India has already made clear to that. But at the same time, it knows that Russia knows the fact that they require India to somehow counterbalance the heavy lopsided that
Yes.
the West has it. So West is obviously interested in India because they've been carrying them together for the Quad,
Yes.
for different trade relations, promising software transfer to counter Russia. So all that is in play just to ensure that India is on the side of the Americans, the West, so that they're easy to, because India also has a common enemy in China.
Yes.
And which Russia wants them to mend fences, but as of now that is still
So
issue for
the
debate.
China factor, of course, coming back to the dragon in the room. And Commander Jayaprakash, two quick questions to you. One is, of course, the China factor, that, while you have Prime Minister Modi traveling to Russia, you have Russia also with this very no limits partnership with China as they've defined it recently, and the relationship is only growing between China and Russia, and China is not our best friend, very clearly. That is one aspect. The other one is that because of the Western sanctions about the war in Ukraine, you have this great pivot of Russia towards the east. It has started looking more at the Eastern Bloc's countries like China and India for business, for investments, for trade, for selling energy, for its civilian infrastructure. Give us your perspective on this. How does Russia play these two very critical relationships that it has with China and with India, and how its pivot towards the east, towards China and towards India, is playing out?
You see, I am not a geopolitical expert, but from whatever experience that I have, I should say the Russians treat India with utmost sincerity, and they go to any extent to support Indian cause. The relationship with the China, I can't comment. But one thing I can tell you, I interact people in Russia at virtually all levels. And from every angle, my understanding is the Russians will come to our support to help us in whichever way that we are looking, it will happen. Coming to the sanction, there had been a lot of difficulties in transacting with the Russians, both in terms of money transfer as well as in collaboration. You know, the Russian system is quite structured and regimented, and it is not easy for them to move out of that. So today we are looking at not only the defense and nuclear energy aspects, but normal commercial business as well. Indeed, very few Indians have come to generate normal business. When I say normal business, there are standard business like the medical support and diamond, things like that. But to come to Russia to do shipbuilding, I think it is the first time it is happening. There are difficulties, but the people concerned find that our workers are exceptionally good and they want to do more and more work with us.
Right, absolutely. And this point that you raised, Commander Jayaprakash, the fact that how difficult it is to do business, and you're a businessman, you've been dealing with Russia for 3 decades now. So you're literally the go-to person, on all these issues. Ambassador said this point of Russia's pivot towards the East, towards China and towards India, towards the markets of the East, Vietnam even. How does India take advantage of this? Given the number of Western sanctions that are in place, how do you navigate this minefield of Western sanctions and do business with Russia at the same time? You think these issues will actually crop up in Prime Minister Modi's summit with President Putin?
As you saw, this is a very important aspect that will be discussed because we saw how India navigated the difficult task and terrain of getting buying Russian oil during the height of the sanctions in the Ukraine war. We were able to navigate, and I think we'll have to find ways and means of finding what is in our mutual interest, and I'm sure that this will be discussed. But just one point that I wanted to mention to you was about when you had in the previous question, you've been saying about the dragon in the room.
Yes.
Certainly, the dragon in the room is going to overshadow more and more our relationship with Moscow, with Russia.
Yes.
I think because the way it is, it is now the number 2 economy in the world.
Yes.
Its economy is run by or by other nations which are dependent on their manufacturing, their
Yes.
supply chains. So the West, the US, India, all of us are have a heavy negative trade balance with China.
Yes.
We are looking to diversify. We are looking to increase our options. And of course, with Russia, we would try and see what is possible and how we can, increase our trade and economic relations, along with, of course, strengthening our existing ties in defense and security in every which way. And
Yes.
I think that is going to be an important aspect of this relationship. And they are also going to discuss, I think, the Ukraine war. There has been a lot of talk of it finally winding down, and especially, if President Trump comes, I think the support is likely to come down for the Ukraine war from America.
Yes.
So that's another factor which could be discussed. The general geopolitical flux, the geopolitical situation that exists right now will certainly be discussed between the two countries, and how to further strengthen our relationship. And this is a very, the fact that the commander is in Russia and we are manufacturing there, our people are manufacturing there, I think is a really, positive development. And more such, I think, avenues and options will be looked at to see how we can further strengthen this time-tested, as I said, relationship.
Yes, absolutely. And Commander Jayaprakash, what are the, as a businessman who's been dealing with Russia for so many years now, and given these exceptional circumstances like Ambassador Seth mentioned, what is it as a businessman that you would like to see the government of India do to make it easier for Indian businesses to invest in Russia and vice versa?
Prime Minister visited this shipyard called SSK Zvezda. It is in Far East. Prime Minister, along with President Putin, came here for Eastern Economic Forum in 2019. And President Putin took the initiative of getting our Prime Minister to this shipyard to show the quantum of work available and requested Prime Minister to send the Indian shipbuilding team to help them in building these ships.
Right.
Let me just tell you one thing about this shipyard. It is one of the most modern shipyards in the world. It is still in the making. It is not complete. There are about 4 LNG carriers. You know, when we say LNG carriers, it's about 87,000 tonner ships, icebreaker, huge ships. And there are many other kind of large vessels being built here. There's a floating dock, which is 350 meters long, being built. So it is gigantic.
Right.
And Prime Minister had agreed to send Indian shipbuilding specialists to this shipyard. And that was one opportunity that has come on our way. And when I came here to meet the shipyard general director, one good thing happened. That is, 1 week before I came to this shipyard, 2 of my long-term associates, say for example 25, 30 years in the defense business, had come here, top people. And the general director mentioned about Grozny and my name. And they told, you can just go blindly with this company and this person. And believe me, that is the beginning. And without looking at it, he prepared the contract and made me to sign in the next 1 or 2 months' time. Now, what is important? Today, we have about 250 Indian people working here.
Right.
And believe me, wherever I went in the yard, they are only talking one thing. The Indian specialists are far, far superior to all other specialists who are working here.
Absolutely.
There were people.
Yes.
There were people from Korea. Now they have gone back. There are Russian company specialists working here. Can you imagine?
Yes.
They are going to give that job back to Krasny to redo that job.
Right. Right.
So that is the quality of work our people
Absolutely.
can do.
Quality of Indian workmen, second to none. But thank you very much, Commander Jayaprakash. And I'm afraid we're completely out of time over here. But thank you for outlining the opportunities that exist for Indian businesses in Russia. And of course, that minefield that they have to negotiate while doing business in Russia and vice versa because of the sanctions. But thanks for joining us this evening. Commander Jayaprakasan, wish you all the very best in your endeavors in Vladivostok. Ambassador Manju Seth and my colleague Justin Thomas.